Novel A Tale of Two Cities, Chapter 2 The Shoemaker. Lucy Manette, Mr. Lorry, and Monsieur Defarge were into the room where Dr. Manette was locked up. Monsieur Defarge greeted the old doctor and noted that he was still hard at work. After a long silence, the doctor replied that he was still working in a very weak voice because of bodily weakness and lack of practice. The doctor was badly affected by the long imprisonment in the Bastille. His mind was clearly affected. He was unable to recognize his visitors. He had a white beard, a hollow face, and bright eyes that were unnaturally large. He was busy making a shoe, and when Mr. Lorry asked him what kind of shoes he was making, the doctor said it was the ladies' shoe at the present fashion, and that he had only seen a pattern. And when Mr. Lorry asked him about his name, he said it was 105 North Tower, which was his cell. When Mr. Lorry asked him if he was a shoemaker by trade, he said he wasn't, and that he learned in prison. Mr. Manette, or Dr. Manette, couldn't remember Mr. Lorry's name or recognize him. Lucy, who feared meeting her father, started to move closer to him. She stood next to him. The two gentlemen were worried about her as he was holding his knife. He noticed that the golden curls of her hair and touched them, saying, "It is the same. But how can it be?" He put his hand to his neck and took off an old string that had folded a piece of cloth containing a small quantity of hair similar to hers. He said that someone put her head on his shoulder long ago, before they took him and kept the hairs he found on his coat. Mr. Lorry and Monsieur Defarge wanted to come to help her as the doctor turned towards her when the knife fell on the ground, but she begged them to stay away. He asked about her voice and asked about her name, thinking she was the prisoner's guard's daughter. She said she would tell him her name later, and told him that his misery and pain were over, and that she loved him, and that he should rest and live peacefully. The doctor put his head on her breast and fell asleep. Mr. Lorry said that Dr. Manette should be taken away, but Lucy wondered if he was fit for the journey. Defarge said that for many reasons Dr. Manette would be safer out of France. She asked both of them to lock her up in the dark room with her father and prepare for the journey. She was no longer afraid of him. Later, Louis Manette, Dr. Manette, and Mr. Lorry were on their way to England, and the only people who witnessed their departure were Monsieur and Madame Defarge.